Hey guys, what's going on? David Avellan here with my co-host Robert Drysdale for another episode of Breaking the Guard. Rob, what's going
Episode
on?
99. What is it now, Dave? I've lost
We're
count.
50 something.
50 something?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, we're getting there.
We're moving along.
Yeah, man. How you been? What's new with you?
Been getting some more training time now, but then I had 1 week I trained 5 times,
Yeah.
which I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Like I got a lot of mat time in. But this week I got in once, I lifted once, and then I tried to go again, and now my ribs are all tweaked.
Yeah,
But
it's hard to push that. I go to the gym. Like, I get to that threshold and I kind of stop right there. I don't really push that boundary all the time anymore.
I'm still learning the limits. Like
Yeah.
it seems silly, but like I'm still figuring out like the balance. Like I think I know what did it at least.
Yeah.
Because I did legs where I did Zercher squats, which I normally don't do. You know Zerchers? That's when you hold the barbell
Oh,
in your
yeah.
biceps, and then
Yeah.
it gives you a little deeper squat.
Yeah. It's
But-
hard on your back, the erectors, too, because you have to keep your back straight.
Yes.
It's very hard because it
And
pulls you in. Yeah.
It pulls you in, and then the other thing is it's hard to breathe because the bar is pressed against your diaphragm.
All those, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and coincidentally, this part of my ribs all pulled and all along. It's like weird. It's like a little belt.
You know what it could have been, too? They didn't warm up properly.
Well, when
Yeah, good hard warm up, break a good sweat, because that one is hard on your
in your core.
yeah, and not only that,
Yeah.
your ribs don't get a lot of blood flow. That's why they take forever to heal, because it's cartilage, right? So there's not a lot of blood flow. That could be something to do with it.
Yeah, so I feel like okay, that one probably because I was fine. I was a little sore, but then I grappled the next day,
Yeah.
and nothing really happened. But then after the training session, I kept rubbing here. I'm like, oh, crap. Then woke up next morning and like, no, it's like a little belt.
Yeah,
I was like, God damn it! Like, okay, now I know. If my back hurts a little bit, don't grapple the next day.
you know what I started doing, because I have like a herniated disc on my lower back, and I've been complaining about it for 10 years, right? And I went to the gym, dude. I hadn't done abs in years. Just don't do abs, you know? Like,
Yeah.
who cares? So I'm not gonna just do abs today. I did abs for like 20 minutes at the gym. Dude, it helped my lower back so much. I think that's what's just missing. Like that blood flow, you know, and just like exercise in your lower back. I mean, your abs, but it's the same area, right? Like, so you're getting all that movement left, right. Man, great. Like, it's almost like physical therapy for my back. My back has felt great the last 2-3 days.
Nice.
So I like little things like that. I'm rediscovering. I'm like relearning how to train in order to stay healthy. You know, it's because you have your method up to a certain point, and it's not really a method. It's just chaos. It's just if it's hard, it's good. If you're exhausted, it's good. You stop when you're done. You know, when you have nothing left to give, and that's your MO. Like, that's how you live your career. And now that you're no longer fighting, it's like you have all the accumulated damage to your body. It's like you have to relearn how to train in an intelligent way.
You know what's hilarious that this reminds me of? I watched my match with Henry Gracie, which I found online.
Ultimate Showdown, what was it
Yeah,
called?
it's been like hidden for
Yeah.
like I've heard people like, oh, the grapevine, I saw it at the Gracie Academy, but it's like it was like hidden somewhere. I saw it, and there was an interview with me before the match, and the color commentators are, oh, you know, David Avellan, he's like 23 years old, and he's, you know, surprisingly, he's never suffered a serious injury in his career. And he says he's very lucky. I'm like, you dumb son of a bitch, you just jinxed yourself.
Like at 23, you look at injuries, you think it's like, because, you know, at that age, the future is something so abstract.
Yeah.
Because you're so immersed in the moment. You know, when you're in your 20s, you don't think about the future. You're just looking at what's right in front, which is probably for the better. You know, like if you're like scared of injuries when you're 23, you would have not have accomplished what you accomplished.
Yeah.
It's because you didn't give a shit that you went far. There's something reckless about it, you know. But I think there's some wisdom in being reckless too. Like I don't. If you're too responsible too young, you're not gonna live.
Yeah, and I think that's the time to be reckless because
Your
you have a
body can
little
take
more
it.
you have a little more leeway to recover. Like now it's a pain in the ass, you know. Like I just saw that, I'm like, that young David didn't know what was coming down the pipeline.
100%. And I remember like when I hear like guys that are like 35, 40, and they'd ask me at my age, and I'd be like 21, like, oh man, you're so young. Oh, good for you. They're like, it's like celebrating my youth. I'm like, what is he talking about? Like, I'm gonna be, because you think you're gonna feel the same way 20 years down the road.
It's hilarious because it's such like a common thing to hear, and I know I felt the same way. I'm like, whatever, old man, you don't know me, you don't know
Yeah.
my body, my
Yeah,
drive,
yeah.
but like,
I'm Wolverine.
yeah, but it's like trying to explain to like a young kid about love, they have like that puppy love, like you can't tell someone that, like there's
You have
no
to
way
feel it. No.
you communicate it. It's like it has to be felt. It's one of those lessons that they have to hit their head on the wall.
You know what's funny about that? And that applies to a lot of things. Like there are things that I've read in my youth that I could see there was a lot of depth there, a lot of feeling, but I couldn't quite grasp it. Like not in a very, you have to live it. You have to experience what that person is trying to get across through words. And then you can really relate to it. And that's when it's truly beautiful because you can, it's like you can, I know what you're talking about. I've been there before. Like we can share that feeling, right? And that's something that comes with time. And that's, I think it applies to everything. You just like time gives you that. Like it gives you the little extra, you just feel more deeply. Like I can relate to things like fear, hope, love, hate. Like I understand these things better than I did in my 20s.
Sure. No,
Like to me, they were just abstract concepts that went in poetry and books, but like it's not something I had felt deeply.
because if you've never gone through those things, like you don't have there's no scale. There's no sense of like, I don't know, like for example, like I always tell people like I appreciate food so much after wrestling.
Yeah.
Before I wrestled and had to deal with weight cutting and stuff, I never really cared about food that
Take
much.
for granted.
Yeah, like I enjoy it, but like whatever. But after like you deprive yourself of proper nutrition and all that for like months on end, and then you get to eat
A hamburger. Yeah.
Yeah, or like our thing. I went to San Diego this past week and I met with an old high school wrestling buddy, Ryan, and him and his brother Chris were upset. His brother Chris in particular was obsessed with blizzards, Oreo blizzards. Like that was.
They're delicious. Yeah.
Yeah, like in high school, that was like the thing. So like he even bought himself his own blizzard machine.
Yeah.
Where like he had the little thing that would spin.
Yeah.
So when there was like after a tournament, would come over to his house. We'd bring like the ice milk, the same thing they use at Dairy Queen. Get a bunch of and just go nuts, But like we had this weird like fetish about like having these blizzards, But for me, like everything, kind of like you can only appreciate food when you've truly been deprived of it, and that's when you understand, like, when kids say you're starving, like, you're not starving, you little bastard. You haven't even experienced what starving is yet.
No,
like,
it's true.
So when you feel like deep pain, which only can usually, hopefully only comes later in your life, when you suffer a loss of a family member.
Happiness.
And then you can really, wow, like now I know what bad times really are. And like, this is why good times are greater. But like, if you only had good times and then you have an amazing time, it's like,
it's not a big change.
Yeah, it's like, it's a little better, It's kind of like that expression. I say good times make weak men, weak make bad times, and bad times,
Yeah, it goes, hard times make strong men, strong men make good times, good times make weak men make hard times.
Yeah.
So we're at the verge of that cycle, in case you're wondering.
Yeah,
I think we're at the verge of collapse here.
For sure.
I saw something, like, that's switching gears. I could go on this rabbit hole with you about, like, hardship. I love that topic. But I saw something that was truly shocking to me, right? This is, like, actually makes me angry. I went to eat at a Greek restaurant here on Sahara and Fort Apache, I believe. Okay. And, I'd never been there before, but I Googled, Greek food. I was in the mood for Greek food, right? So, like, Greek food near me, and it takes me to this place. And I get there, and there's a sign on the door that says, "We are closed due to lack of staff." Wait, pause.
Yeah.
This is the first time that I have even heard. I mean, I don't think has there ever been a time in history where people were like going out of business because they didn't have workers.
I don't know, but
I can't think of any.
But it is a phenomenon. I've seen that.
It's incredible. It's outstanding. I can't even put.
I think I saw that in San Diego also when we were walking around. And
dude, if you drive Spring Mountain, like every other restaurant has a sign on it that says "Now hiring." Like it's terrible. Like and I don't, and it's a cultural problem, Dave. It is not a problem of economics. I don't think it's economics.
Well, I can differ on that. I think it is an economic problem because a lot of these people, I don't know if there still are, but they were incentives.
Positively. When I say economics, I meant like negatively, like as in they're struggling. I think the issue is, they're getting checks from the government, but it is a culture. What I mean by a cultural feature is that people think that's okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and people are not ashamed of it. Yeah. I'm not the hardest working man on the planet. Anyone who knows me knows that. Unless I'm really passionate about something, I'll sink my teeth in. Yeah, I can work for 18 hours a day, no problem. But for the most part, like, I enjoy my free time. Like, I never wanted to be a billionaire because I don't think there's a point working that hard unless you really love what you're doing, right? But I like to think I have some work ethic, you know, and like the fact that like it just people don't want to work, and that's what's so shocking to me. Like, dude, like it's not like you made it in life. You know what I'm saying? Like, me and you can say like, okay, we've done some things in our life, you know, like we can go, okay, I'm still working, but I don't have to work 12 hours a day, 15 hours a day if I don't want to, right? But you get some of these 20-year-old kids that just barely made it through high school, and they're like, they think they made it in life. Dude, I know I sound like old man, but dude, it's getting worse.
Yeah.
It's been getting worse, and I'm wondering what's next. I wonder if like we're gonna have a society that's just like run by AI, and everyone's gonna be miserable because everyone's gonna be so comfortable. Life's gonna be so easy. We're not gonna be able to have that struggle that you were talking about, like starving yourself to appreciate, you know, Blizzard, Oreo cookie ice cream. I'm serious here. Like, people are like, oh yeah, no, but it's exactly what's happening. Like if things are handed to you, they have no worth.
Yes.
If I walked up to a stranger, I would this example, and I handed you a black belt, what would that black belt be worth? Zero. Right? But if you kill yourself, it means something, right? Like you spend your life working for it. So the reward is always proportionate to the effort. Is the point I always try to make. And I tell this to my students because I give this speech almost every day at the gym, and I think it goes when they're out the other. They don't really listen to what I'm saying because they don't get it. Yeah. It's like you're after the wrong things, people. Like you have to learn how to invest in something you're truly passionate about and put your heart and soul into it. And then the reward at the end of that is proportionate. What you guys are after is comfort. You're not going to get anything out of that. You're not going to get anything out of, I just want to live at the beach and do nothing all day and like live my life. What's it doing? Like live your best life. What the fuck does that mean? Like I hear that one all the time. You know, it's like I think it's a generation of people that have been convinced. My generation, like I think, you know, but the younger crowd is worse because of social media. They've convinced themselves of what happiness is, what well-being is, what true satisfaction is, and they really don't have it. But they feel like they're on the right track about it. And they're really like, no, for sure we're on the right track. We're just going to be just like our heroes on Instagram. And then, you know, as a result, like depression rates are through the roof.
Yeah.
And I think it all ties up, man. Like this is all, it's one big cycle. I don't think it's coincidental, you know?
Well, like you said, for someone to be comfortable who's perfectly able to work, to just take a check from the government and do so for months and maybe even over a year and
embarrassing.
It's embarrassing. Like I know the guys that did my windows, they were one of the contractors was just like, oh, you know, a lot of competitors, they can't even work right now because all their staff just decide, you know what, we're just gonna stay home, take checks, rather than go out,
that has to
butt, you know. So like this one group, you know, they were still happy to work, you know, they took pride in doing their work, right? But I think that's partially the problem also. If you're just doing work to collect a paycheck and you don't have any fulfillment in the work itself, then I can see, you probably don't care about how the money gets to you, right? See the same people that go looting, right? Because it's just money to me. If I'm not going to get in trouble for it, whether I can get it playing video games in my house versus actually having to go outside and work. Send me the check, right? But ideally, we'd be doing work that's we have some attachment to, like, you know, especially if you're doing like arts and crafts or whatnot. There's pride in the output of the product. Even if you're doing service-related business, you should be proud of the service that you're able to contribute. You know, like if you're going to the gym and you're teaching, there is some pride in like, oh, I helped this person achieve this technique, and maybe that's going to help them feel better or do better. But like you said, like if you're just content to just sit at home, man, that's, to me, it's pathetic. You know? It
is, and it's not. It's in here. I mean, I know it's like we probably had this same podcast like 25 times already. Half our podcast about it because I'm fascinated by this theme. But I really think that, you know, don't get me wrong, man. Like I've had jobs that are like I worked at a store before, like selling skateboards, and that's supposed to be cool and fun, and I hated it. I've worked as a manny before, like taking care of kids. Like I've had jobs that are not related to jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Man, if it's not your passion, it's hard, man. Like you have to go there and do it something you don't like, you know. But man, what are you doing with your free time?
Yeah.
And this is something I tell my students all the time too. Like what you do with your free time defines you. You're not what you think you are. You're not what you're claimed to be. You're not what your social media account says you are. You are what you do with your free time. How do you spend your free time? Because that's what's building you. Because we all have responsibilities. Like you have to go to work. You have to go to school. You have to take care of the kids. You all have like chores that they don't define you, but they're part of life, right? And as you get older, you have a family. You know, the amount of responsibility increases, and maybe that right there prevents you from having any you time. But I think everyone should set aside like 2-3 hours out of their day where you're manifesting you, you're building you. Like, what are you building in that free time? Because if you're not doing anything productive, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not judging.
Yeah.
But don't be surprised. Don't be fucking sending me like, I'm gonna do this, and like, no. What are you doing in your free time?
Yeah.
You know, like I found jiu-jitsu. I was fortunate because I found jiu-jitsu when I was 16. I was very lucky. I always say that it's 50% effort, 50% luck. But like that right there, like all my free time and energy went into one thing. It was easy. It wasn't an effort because I loved it. You know, I know that you can relate. I know that other people listening perhaps can relate. So I imagine someone has a 9 to 5 and they don't want that job at the Greek restaurant. I get why they don't want that job. Okay, so you're not working. Now you're getting a check from the government. What are you doing with those 24 hours? Because you're not working.
Yeah.
I hope you're reading a lot of books. I hope you're working out like crazy. I hope you're like reading some serious like articles out there. I hope that you are doing something that is growing you as a human. Because if you're not, don't give me a sad story about why your life is hard.
Yeah.
Because you're doing it to yourself, man. And this is like huge part of the discussion that people don't want to have, but there's a complete lack of accountability in this country. Like people just like, it's always blaming. Like people, we live in the richest country in history. Life has never been easier. This is the easiest life has ever been. I wasn't like at UNLV, it was one of the, I can't remember which class it was. And we're talking about like, you know, millennials and whatever. I was like, I said, I just fire for this is in front of like very PC crowd. And I go, I think this is the most spoiled and entitled generation that ever walked the earth. It's just like people have never had it easier than this generation of Americans. Why? Like it really is. Like, you know, it really, I think about what life was like in the United States 100 years ago and compare it to now as far as comfort goes, you know?
Yeah.
And then like there were outrage. All these kids went through the recession. And recession? What recession? 2008?
Yeah.
I came from Brazil. I moved from Brazil in 2008. Like people, unemployment here was like 15%. Brazil, like 15% is the norm. Like 30% is possible. Like it happens. Like I'm used to that, you know? So when I moved here in 2008, I'm thinking, people complain about this economy because I've been in Brazil for so long. It's like, this is the best economy I've ever seen. You know, it's very easy, especially for Americans, to lose perspective of how fortunate we are to live here.
Well, kind of on that same token, it's why a lot of self-made millionaires are actually foreigners. And I think it's because they can see, like, from having a lack of opportunity, like, you know, you could be the most motivated man, but if you're in China, it's going to be very difficult to become a millionaire just because the roads are not open for you, right? They require special pathways that only certain people get. Here, everybody has it, you know, but it's just who's going to actually put in the time for it. And you give somebody who comes to this country specifically to take advantage of opportunities, they're going to take it, you know, versus the people, like you said, somewhat spoiled, and they're just comfortable. And like you said, comfort's a hard place to grow from, right? Because you're comfortable, you're good. You don't really need to do anything else.
It's terrible.
And that's why, like, when people talk about, like, what's it, like Tulsi Gabbard, I think she was, like, supporting a motion for, like, universal income. Essentially, it's like a living wage. Like, anybody who just breathes air.
You get paid to be alive.
Be alive.
Congratulations.
Yeah, and, like,
you can breathe.
And to me, it's like a very naive point of view. Like, you think, and the idea they think is like, oh, you know, like, if you didn't have to worry about working for survival, then you could really expand on the creative pathways and do all this stuff. I'm like, if that was the case, then we would have a bunch of genius welfare people, you know. But like, guess what? It doesn't happen that way because we're animals. An animal that's spoiled, you know, it's like a domesticated dog. You put it out in the wild, it dies. It forgot how to survive. It doesn't know how to hunt. It doesn't know where to get shelter and stuff like that. So like, we're the same way. You know, you give people everything they need to survive, and they don't have to move a finger. They're probably not going to move a finger.
It's inhumane too. Like I know there's a guise of humanity in this sort of thinking. Like, I'm doing this to help my neighbor. You're not helping. No. It's like if I go to jiu-jitsu with you and I let you beat me every single round. Oh, Dave feels great about himself. He just tapped me 100 times in 5 minutes. Yeah. Did I help you?
No, you gave me if anything, you've harmed me by giving me a false sense of security, right? Like, I'm like, oh, look, I just smashed the black belt world champion. That means I can smash anybody. Yeah. And now I'm walking the streets thinking I'm safe, and then anybody could kick my ass.
And this is my peeve with a lot of this sort of thinking, is that they believe, and and I'm not to get too political here, but there's this belief that if you create a foundation of, I call it a foundation, Play-Doh. If you're going to build a house, you have to have a solid foundation. The bigger you want to build that house, the better the foundation has to be. It's like they believe they can create great things out of like a very weak foundation, which is untruthful. Like it's exactly what we're talking about. It's untrue, but like they want it to be true. And then when the house collapses, it's because, it's a social construct, or like there's no such thing as nature and biology. Everything is about, the unfairness of life and the world. It's like, no, man, it's you too.
Yeah.
Like you're going out lying to people, and the other person is believing these lies, and you're expecting to be fulfilled and happy and productive. And like, I'm sorry, man, it's just not going to work. It just won't work. I mean, it never has. It's like this huge, and I see this on so many levels. It's not just, I see this in jiu-jitsu. I see this politically, economically, culturally. Like it's this misunderstanding of, who's to say what life is about, right? Who the fuck knows, right?
Yeah.
Like it means something different to everyone.
Sure.
But I think it's fair, it's consistent to say that life is about overcoming.
Yeah.
And I'm reading Nietzsche nonstop. So like this is like, it's on my mind all day. Because,
Yeah.
But I think he's right. Like life is not, there's no destination, man. There's no final outcome. There's no utopia, no paradise. There is a cycle of struggle, right? You live to struggle and to overcome yourself. And that's meaning. That's where you derive your meaning. It's not, when I die, I'll have my meaning. Or when I'm rich, I'll have my meaning. I will be fulfilled when I win that world title. Or if I just follow this theory or system at the end of it. It's not so flat, and I think we would be more fulfilled if we understood that, instead of like constantly looking for the easy way, because I looking back, man, like my best years in jiu-jitsu, Dave, were way before I won world titles. Those were the happiest days to me. Like in jiu-jitsu, was like where I was like getting in a van and going to tournaments with like very little money, with very little expectations, other than just being there with my friends and doing well and representing the team. Like that was incredible.
Yeah.
Right? But there was no reward. No one knew who I was. Like there was no money. There was no like, big media. But it was very meaningful, in a very deep way.
Yeah, I would think it's probably because you were overcoming a lot more than you were towards the end of the career, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
essentially making that jump from purple belt to brown belt to black.
Yeah.
There's a lot of internal obstacles that you had to overcome, things that you thought were limits that they weren't. You broke through them.
Yeah.
So once you're at the end of the spectrum, now it's not as big as a deal. Like my girlfriend asked me, "Oh, don't you want to like compete again?" I'm like, "No, I've fought a lot of the big names.
Yeah.
I've grappled with you. I've grappled with Cyborg, Lovato. Like, I know where I'm at on on this totem pole. So the rewards are very minimal now, right?
Yeah.
Like I know where I am in this hierarchy of what I can do. I feel like there's some people that never get there, and I think those people usually struggle more with letting go because they never felt being at the top. Right?
I get that. Yeah.
So like then
then
you have unanswered questions, right? Like I feel bad like some fighters get injured and then they can never overcome it. It's like, man, that sucks because like they never got to test themselves, right? Like you were a step away from the big shot and then you missed it. But like if you got up to the big stage and you got to perform, you don't really have regrets. You did what you did, and you now know like this is what it's like at the top,
And I can relate to, because my real dream was to be a UFC champion, right? That was always like my jiu-jitsu was they're stepping stones in between, and I didn't make it in the UFC. So there's always a part of me is like, what, like I can still remember what it was like not to be a jiu-jitsu champion, because it's the same way I feel. It's the same feeling, right? Of like, I wonder what it's like on that side. But and then your smarter brain goes, it's the same shit. There's no difference. You have more money, right? More money, more problems, probably more reporters, probably more fake people around you. That comes with fame, that comes with all these things. So there's a part of me that goes, and am I better off? Would I have been better off with that? Like, so of course, I'd love to have that accomplishment on my resume, but so it's very easy for me, because we fought at ECC. We've got grappled against some of the best in the world, to tell some purple belt that's coming up in his dream and to say, oh man, it doesn't really mean that much at the end. Yeah. How do you tell him that? He's not going to believe you. He's not going to believe you, but like, if he doesn't feel it, if he doesn't have that feeling that we're describing, he's going to be wondering what it's like.
Yeah.
And I think that's even worse. That's like and so I don't tell people not I tell them, man, go for it. Like you see your dream, man, you go for it 100%. Fuck what people are saying. You almost have to be a little irresponsible about it.
Sure.
But if they ask me sincerely, is it going to be great on the other side? I'll be honest with you. Like, no. It's just the same shit.
There's still more.
It's still like, there's always something else, you know? Like,
I think what game was it? Like Ghosts and Goblins. Like when you beat the game, it just starts over.
Who? Which one?
Ghosts and Goblins.
I don't think I played that.
It was like a Nintendo game, an arcade machine, but like it was this impossibly difficult game. And then at the end, when you beat it, it's like you just have to start all over again. Like there's no like final thing. You're like, son of a bitch. Like, oh, that's
it gets harder. It gets harder. It just goes up a level.
Yeah. You just start all over again. But it's like that. So I had a friend of mine, an old student, that he had asked me. He's like my age, like 42 or 44 or something. And he's never fought MMA before, but now he wants to fight. He's like, Dave, should I do it? I'm like, well, I mean, he's built like a freaking ox. Like he's super strong. I'm like, you're strong enough, and you have experience, but you've never stepped in. But
how old is he?
He's like 42 or 44. So like he's on the edge.
It's a passion project.
It's a passion project, right? Like if it's one of those questions that are going to be bothering you, then you might as well get an answer. I just told him, just get matched up with someone around your age. Like don't fight some 20-year-old kid. But like
I got a story similar to that one. A little off topic where we're going, but you remember Donovan Craig? He was an editor for Fight Magazine back in the day. You probably met him. Like, okay, he was the editor for Fight Magazine I think he was one of the founders of the magazine, whatever. So I knew him through the fight, and this is like 10 years ago. And when he messaged me and he goes, Rob, I'm going to fight MMA before I get too old. I want to fight. He's like 40-something.
Yeah.
I want to get at least one fight. I've been reporting on MMA since I was, a teenager. I want to know what it's like to be in there. Will you corner me? I'm like, man, I'd be honored.
Yeah.
I'm assuming he'd been training his whole life because I met him in a bunch of fight events, but I never actually trained with him, right?
Yeah.
But I'll be in your corner. So he's fighting tough enough, amateur, right? And I go there to show the day of the fight, and he's warming up, and I'm sorry if Donovan ever listens to this. I don't mean to offend, but I'm just telling it vividly as I can. I see him hitting pads. I'm like, oh, ouch, this is going to be bad. I hope his jiu-jitsu is really good. He had no hands. Sorry, Donovan. He probably thought he did. But he had like really bad hands, right? I'm like, ooh, I hope his jiu-jitsu is on point. And this is like 15 minutes before the fight. We're warming up, Dave. And he walks up to me and he goes, so Rob, what do I do if the fight hits the ground?
Oh,
and I'm like, oh, fuck, you don't train. It's like, no, you never train. Like, never done jiu-jitsu in his life. And I'm like, this guy's been reporting MMA his whole life, but he actually hasn't done much training. And I'm like, man, what do you... So if you had to... And his opponent is like this 23-year-old kid, jiu-jitsu purple belt, shredded.
Oh, God.
Like he looks like a super athlete.
It's a disaster.
Like one of those like CrossFit freaks, I'm like, oh man, this guy's gonna get killed, Like, oh, I also want to tell him to like call the fight, man. Don't go. Almost like, but here we are, I'll do my best. So I have like 15 minutes to work with this guy. So I teach him two things. I teach him how to sprawl, and I teach him a guillotine. So he goes out there. This is a true story, man. Like this is legit. You can't make this shit up. He goes out there. Kid is like jacked, and he's actually pretty confident. He walks in there, he feels confident. I'm like, all right. So the fight starts. Sure enough, the kid shoots a double. Dave, on my children, Donovan sprawls, puts a guillotine on the kid, jumps close guard, taps the kid. This is like 1 minute into the fight. And I'm thinking, there's no way, man.
Best coach ever.
No way. It's like, yes. Like, best coach ever. Like, 10 minutes to work with the guy. And no, he pulled it off. But
that's crazy.
But he just wanted to have that feeling. That happened to another reporter, Matthew Pauly. He came to the gym years ago, and he was interviewing a bunch of the fighters, and he wanted, I can't remember. I remember training him for his fight. I don't remember how it went, but same thing. A reporter, they wanted to fight, and I respect those guys.
That's a lot of balls.
But I respect because these guys don't have no background, so they'll train for 6 months just to know what it's like, and I have so much respect for that because. Man, it does take a lot of courage, man. I say this all the time. I have no fear, shame in saying this, Dave. I was shitting my pants every single time. There's not a single time I stepped in that cage where I wasn't like trying to make excuses in my head to quit. Like, why should I just turn around and go home? I don't need to do this. Yeah. Why am I doing this? Oh, I'm injured. My knee kind of hurts. Maybe I should call. You know what I'm saying? You're mind fucking yourself because you're so scared of being in there.
It's a real thing. And I think that's again, I know we talked about it, but just to hammer it home. Everybody has those thoughts, varying scales. You know what I mean? Like, for me, early on I had it, and towards the end I lost it all. Like, but then again, towards the end I also performed less as well as I did. So I think it's good to have fear in you. Like if you have no, I've competed with zero fear, and I didn't do that well. And I feel it's like the difference between being a robot and being emotional, right? Like the emotions are good. You have to channel them. If you don't have any emotions, then you have no skin in the game. So it's kind of like you don't care. And I think you lose a lot of that power. Like you definitely want to tap into it, but I think those guys, that report in particular, like no training jumping in, it's a mix of balls and ignorance, right? Because I think if you train a little bit,
but courage is ignorant. Like they correlate a lot.
Yeah. But like if you train a little bit, then you realize, man, this is really hard.
I don't know nearly as much as I thought I did.
You have to train a lot to be able to fight. But if you have no training, you're like, oh, I watched UFC. I reported on this. I know what's going on.
They believe it. I know those guys all the time. But you think about it too, like I almost like admire, and I admire their ignorance, and because it correlates with their courage.
Yeah.
They're so unaware how much some of these guys, I have guys that walk in the gym. They tell me, I used to fight a lot in high school, and they think that's enough.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, you think you're going to be fighting in 6 months? You're very brave. Yeah. If you're ready to step into a cage with those skills. They have no clue. And then you got to put them with a 14-year-old green belt. Yeah. Get triangled 19 times. Like, oh, shit, I suck. Yeah, you know, I would have told you, but it's one of those things you can't say it because people aren't prepared for reality. They need to wrap it up in a lot of, like, coat it with, like, layer after layer after layer of bullshit. And then, oh, no, this is a good product. Yeah. It's like the more full of shit someone is, the better they do at selling, I feel like. You know, you give people reality, they can't handle it. If I told my students or some of these guys like walk to the door to think they're UFC champions, like you don't stand, like you can't. Yeah. Like your window's closed, man. Like it's not, you can't tell them that. But maybe they shouldn't know. Maybe it's better to have that illusion because life is better if you have a little bit of illusion and you're able to dream a little bit. Imagine if you can't make giants out of windmills anymore. Like what do you do? Where do you? I mean, maybe people need that, but I have a tendency to like always try to be truthful, like with people I care about.
No, for sure.
But it doesn't always work.
I think using kids definitely dispels a lot of myths of bravado. I know we used Enrico Coco like that quite a bit.
Who?
Enrico Coco. He could be at ACC. He's still.
I know the name.
Yeah. He started with my brother and I as like 11-year-old Taekwondo black belt. So he was already a really good athlete, but he got into jiu-jitsu. He did really well with it. But when he was like 13 years old, we would have our college buddies come in, and they think they're tough, and like, oh, roll with this kid. Oh. And at the time he was a kid, so he had a little pot belly and stuff like that. Like nobody thought much of him, but man, he was like heel hooking people, arm barring them, choking them, and you get to see the ego just goes, immediately
I love it.
Drops to the floor, and then like they're like, okay, now I'm ready to learn. Yeah. Right, but like you said before that, someone who thinks they could already be a UFC champ, you can't teach them anything yet. Yeah. Like you have to humble them.
You have to crush them, but like the thing is, not everyone's ready for being crushed.
No.
It takes a strong soul to be able to be crushed and bounce back, and I don't think that's something you can train, man. Like I'm the conclusion that some people just want to live in their own heads, be happy, legends in their own minds.
Yeah. Like that's the part as a coach you can't. I mean, I would like to say maybe there's a way we can ease the guy into it, but I don't really know it. Like the first thing is you have to destroy that ego, and then you just hope that they can bounce back from it. Yeah. Like there's something in them that goes, all right, you got me this time, but I'm gonna learn now and be able to beat you. Like that was how I was with my brother. I remember because my brother's a year older than me, so he got into MMA and no holds barred a year before me, and I was wrestling in high school, and I thought I was tough shit. I just came from Jay Robinson 28-day camp, and I'm entering my senior year, and my brother's like, Dave, you got to do this MMA stuff. I'm like, nah, man, I'm a wrestler. He said, just train with me a little bit. And then I went to train with him, and he armbarred me, rear naked choked me a bunch of times. And in my mind, it's like, after wrestling season, I'm going to kick your ass. And I'm going to learn this stuff. Like, that was my mind. Me and my brother, we always, like,
of course, it's the best.
Heads, But, like, it wasn't like I just recoiled, right? Like, I got humbled. I'm like, okay, but I'm going to come back, So that's what you got to kind of hope for. Like, when you smash someone's ego, that they have enough strength that they can come back into it.
I wonder if that's something you can train, though, man. I think runs too deep, man. Like, I think that, like, some of these traits, they run so deep in the human psyche. Because the more on the outside of your psyche it is, the easier it is to train it, I believe. Oh, yeah. The more aware of it you are, the more on the exterior, like the deeper you go, I think the more fixed it is.
Well, it's like you're gonna have to do that till you.
All speculative, of course. Like I don't know shit.
Yeah, but you're gonna have to do psychology on this person, right? Because like you said, there's so many little factors. Like, why is this guy have such an inflated ego? Oh, maybe he was abused earlier in life, and now he's made this shell to protect himself. And if you crush that shell,
and nothing else.
Yeah, you know. So like, I mean, there's a whole ton of factors. Like we've talked about this before. You know, like most people going into martial arts don't have a father figure. Right? Yeah. It's not a coincidence, you know. There's a reason behind that, you know. So, like you said, as a coach, you have to be like a psychologist, a therapist.
Oh, you're everything.
All these different things, you know. It's tricky, you know. Like,
and you don't sign up for those jobs, but they're there. You become a therapist.
Yeah.
You know, and a father figure. Yeah.
It reminds me now. Speaking of someone who needs therapy, like this guy Dylan Dennis.
Holy shit! Okay, going from an intellectual psychological conversation to the gossip of the week. But dude, like I loved. I taught Dylan private when he was like 14, 13 years old. His parents would come to Vegas all the time, and I used to teach him private. And I'm going to like, oh, you should go train with Marcel. Oh, we live in New York. Where should I go train? Oh, Marcel Garcia.
Yeah.
All right. This was like 12 years ago, and I saw he had potential. He was hungry, you know, and I didn't expect he was going to make it as far as he did in jiu-jitsu. Actually surprised me. Man, he's like winning tournaments at brown belt level, doing well. He was one of the top brown belts in the world for a long time, right? And he's a super talented kid, man. But then he went kind of that I need to be like the media kind of route, which has its benefits. I couldn't do it, Dave. Yeah. But guys like him, Jake Paul, Gordon, Connor, it's not that I wouldn't know where to begin. I can't do it. It's not that I don't want to.
It's hard. For me, like I know, like okay, I should post something to it, but I'm like, I just can't do that. You know, like I don't want to say I can't. I just gotta find that motivation to like. But to me, like I try to be authentic with everything I do. You know, I'm not just gonna post something just to.
Dude, and it's exactly, it's not authentic because it is you figure out the algorithm of human stupidity. That's what I call it, right? And then you like dive in and you put like the more, because I've never done this, but apparently you can like look into your Instagram and find out what people are liking, because I don't even know that shit because I never care. But apparently you can find out what is trending on your own Instagram account. So you learn that, and now there's an incentive to give more of what people want. Well, guess what people want?
Yeah.
Garbage, fast food, sugar. You know, the easier it is, the more they want it.
Well, there's like butts, dogs, cars.
Exactly. Anything that is easily digestible that requires no thinking. That is. And then, you know, so we have, I call it intellectual diabetes. Like it's the equivalent, just like there's so much fucking cultural sugar, like things that we don't have to digest. There's no, you know, and people feed off of it. It's like a car accident. Like people may not like it, but they stop to watch, including me. I saw Dylan get choked out by a cop or a security guard or whatever, you know, like there's a part of me I wish I'd not seen that, because I don't want to be feeding into this madness. But just by watching it, I am part of the problem. And I don't see a solution, but like, as crazy as it sounds, I'd lose my shit, Dave, if a security guard choked me like that. I don't know how drunk I am. Like I would not be okay with it. But this helps Dylan in his work, because he probably gained 100,000 followers the next day. So in the way he sees things, and I don't think he needs that, but he thrives off of it, and it helps him in some way. So maybe to each their own, man. Like I just couldn't do it.
Yeah, it's sad to me. I mean, like you said, he's talented. He's
very talented.
He's very good. You know, like I mean, it kind of makes it's hard to root for him because a lot of the trash talking is kind of you know. But on a legit level, he's got skills. You know, he could do well.
He's not the best jiu-jitsu guy in MMA. Okay, not even going, but he has potential, man.
Sure.
Like, and I told him this, like, dude. Like a while back, he stayed with me for like a few weeks, like a couple years ago, 3 years ago, whatever.
No, I remember he was here.
Yeah. And then I go, like, dude, you got tons of potential. Like, sink your teeth in, put your head down and work. You'd be surprised what you can accomplish. But, you know, going that route of, you know, becoming a celebrity has its costs, because you have to be, like, even Connor does that nonstop. He's always in trouble. I suspect it's PR. It's intentional. Yeah. I think he's got a PR agent. He goes, dude, you got to do something. You lost your last 5 fights. You got to do something. So break through a trolley at a bus, like punch someone in the head, like steal someone's phone, get into a fight, like do anything. Yeah. And I think that is part of being on that track, is just like you have to be remembered all the time to stay what they call relevant. Yeah. I think that is the opposite of relevant. To me, Isaac Newton was relevant, right? Adam Smith was relevant. You know, like Roosevelt was relevant. These people are relevant in the grand scheme of the world. You know, someone who's famous for being famous isn't.
Yeah.
But in the age of you know, like I guess people don't see it that way. Yeah, it's sad, man, because it's not, you know, it's completely unnecessary. I mean, but again, I'm part of the problem because we're talking about it. B, I did watch the video.
Yeah.
So that's the whole thing is if you're part of this, if that you're just feeding this algorithm, which is madness when you think about how irresponsible it is, how irresponsible the algorithm is because it just feeds you more of what you want. There's no sense of, I almost think that someone should intervene and go, we got to put fucking brakes here, man. Like we're feeding children garbage and it's just going to get worse, you know?
Well, you know, the problem is like that's how they make money, right? More eyeballs.
Yeah.
Then they could sell that to the advertisers, and they
economically it makes sense.
So they figured it out, but I get what you're saying because it's kind of like you give a kid free reign and go, you can eat candy all day long.
Yeah.
Or you can eat your salads and your steak.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do? The kid's gonna eat candy all day long. You know what I mean? So, and he's gonna get sick and bloated. You know, but like on social media, that's kind of what's happening.
Yeah, it's like intellectual diabetes. You know, it's like what do you do? Like what do you? Because if you're talking about children, I strongly believe parents should intervene. I took the iPads for my kids. They have like a phone that's really old that barely works. It has like 2 apps. It's actually sad how like hard I am. Like I barely let them play. But they got used to it. I give them books now, man.
Yeah.
They read, you know, and it is possible. You can do it. It's just an uphill battle, but you can do it. But when you're talking about adults, at some point, you can't tell an adult what to do. I believe you should tell children what to do. Children should have zero freedom, in my opinion. Shut the fuck up. Do your homework. Clean the door. That's the best way. That's a good parent right there. No, I'm not buying you a car when you're 18. Fuck you. Get a job. That's a good parent. You know, I believe that's good parenting. But at some stage, you have to give them the reins and go like, this is your life, you live it as you wish. And you know, but what do you do when a population clearly does not have the faculties or the responsibility to filter the information that's coming at them and is choosing to live in a cultural cesspool of absolute like waste? And that's what's happening here. Like it is taken such a negative turn. Like the internet is incredible, man. You can Google, you can like find like articles, like interviews, like really smart people. There's some really interesting things out there.
Oh yeah.
But it's the minority. Like, oh, I use it for that. No, you don't. 90% of the time, pay attention to your screen time. Screen time doesn't lie.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Be honest with yourself. And I'm part of the problem. I'm not pointing fingers. I do this too, you know. But it's. I think the algorithm is very, very irresponsible.
You know, it's just more of what we were talking about at the beginning, which is people's minds are just not being used properly, and like the rise of AI is just gonna make things. I fear is gonna make things worse.
Yeah,
because it's gonna. I was at a marketing conference and they're showing some things you can do with AI. It's fascinating, you know, and terrifying at the same time.
Because it's both. Like any technology, it's both.
Apparently, they fed one AI essentially every book that's ever been digitized. Right. So this book pretty much contains the
Millions
whole sum of human knowledge.
Yeah.
And they could do things just as crazy as writing copy. You know, like they can write sales letters, they can write, you know, advertisements, they can, all these things. So now like a job that you considered once was like, well, creative field, this is the domain of humans. You know, like
no, they're gonna be better than us.
Yeah,
they're gonna be better because it's just a matter of time. So what's next? You're gonna have so you reach out for that cup of water, right? You're gonna have a computer that does that for you. We're gonna have a computer that has sex with your wife for you. Like, I'm too tired to fuck you good tonight, so I'm just gonna press play here and let the AI do it for me. Like, what's next?
Yeah.
Like, crazy. When does this? I'm like, oh, it sounds like you're like, dude, we're not. That's kind of where we're going here.
No. I mean, it's funny you're saying it, but it's not. That's already in the works, right? They have sex robots. Right?
Sex robots is on the work. I'm pretty sure like wife is gonna know I'm too tired tonight. There's a sex robot in the closet. Go for it. You know, or you know, we're already not driving our kids to school. Like we don't make. And I'm not saying like, I'll give you like this is dude, a big revelation. Like I never clean the pool. You know, I have a pool in my house. I never clean it. I will go. During COVID, like people weren't coming over, so there's like maybe like 4 times like I had to clean the pool, right? I'm like, oh fuck, I gotta clean the pool. So I have to Google it, learn how to do it, whatever, call people, okay, figure out how to do it. And like the first 5 minutes, like this sucks. After a while, like I kind of got in the zone there. Yeah. Like, oh, it's not too bad, I kind of enjoy, And I watch my mom gardening. Like she loves to garden, right? I'm like, actually, it looks kind of fun. Like little plants growing, and like you have like a relationship with that thing. So I think that these little simple things, that there's a lot of happiness and wisdom there, but we're moving away from these things. You know, I'm not saying I want to be a gardener full time or cleaning pool. That would suck too. But like, I think we're not meant to be doing one thing the whole time, mechanical.
Sure.
I think it's inhumane, in fact, to have someone do the exact same thing their whole life. We're meant to do more. And not doing anything is equally bad because you're meant to be doing things. Like, you have to have like a variety of different ways where you engage with the world, not only physically, but also intellectually. And if you have that, I think, who knows what a fulfilling life is, but I think that's somewhere on the right track.
Well, what you said about doing the same thing forever, that's kind of how I felt like that's an early death, right? Mm-hmm. If your life doesn't change, you don't change, you're dead already. Dead people don't change, right? Like, your life should always be, in my humble opinion, evolving.
Yeah.
There should be different pursuits, passions, or at least even in the martial arts, you might start off as a student, become a coach, you know, or an athlete, then a coach, and then maybe you move on to something else, you know, like, and you need to give yourself different stimuli, because if you're just doing the same thing, you know, you kind of already been there, right? It would be like eating the same food for the rest of your life. It'd be pretty bland, boring, you know. Like,
it's exactly like, you can't, like, no matter how much you like something, you don't eat sushi every day, you know.
Yeah, you gotta twist it up, season it differently, you know. Like, you know, something's gotta be mixed up, you know. So I feel like that, what you're saying, just like trying different things, that's why I like traveling, because it's the easy way of experiencing a new world, right? Without having to do anything entirely yourself. You don't have to get creative. You just go somewhere and then explore, figure things out, you know. And I think that keeps you young in a sense. Like, you start getting old in when you don't change your thinking, right? Like, you become stubborn or rigid. That's kind of like,
that's a whole topic for a whole nother podcast, Dave, because I could see myself. It's almost like you have to fight that, you know. But I think there's a tendency with age for you to become more fixed in your own ways, and it's almost like an effort to remain open-minded to all kinds of change. Like, in jiu-jitsu, I've always been like aware of this, because I remember, believe it or not, for those who are listening, I'm referred to as old school today, but there was a day where I was new school. I had it all figured out. I had like 4 spider guard sweeps, 3 from half guard. I'm modern as fuck, you know. Like, and people laugh at that today, but that's kind of the feeling was. It's like, if you knew spider guard, it was like, oh wow, yep, you know, kind of like a big deal. But you know, I've always been aware that one day that was going to change, and there's going to be a new generation who's going to outdo me, and I'm going to know more than me, and I've always been okay with that. I've never bothered me, which is strange to me why guys from old school like, oh, this modern stuff wouldn't work in a fight. Oh yeah, because your collar chokes would. Yeah. Right, this choke right here is like, man, accept that things have evolved, and it's for the better. If you love jiu-jitsu, you want jiu-jitsu to improve, regardless if you're in you have to be in front. Do you have to be in the vanguard of evolution for you to appreciate the evolution?
Right.
Can't you be in the back watching? Like, I've done my part. I've made it up to here, and now you guys carry on. Because the truth is, all these little shits, these purple belts, thinking you didn't create shit. You had it handed to you. Previous generations. It's easy to make fun of the grandmasters and go, oh, look at their jiu-jitsu, they suck. I mean, how many trial and error those guys had to go for, just to realize, just get to the conclusion of a flower sweep, just to reach those conclusions, how much trial and error they had to go through without internet, without tons of competition. Man, It's incredible what they did, right? So you should never like shit on them. You should always like remember, like, man, I'm here because of them. But like, there's something about I forgot where I was going with that. But
it's part of getting old, right?
Yeah, it's part of getting old. No, but it was good. No, but like, it's accepting that change. Like, I've always been okay with jiu-jitsu, for example. Like, I've always been okay with jiu-jitsu changing. I've always felt I'm perfectly fine watching my students pick up from where I left off and outdo me if I expect that of them.
Well, yeah, if you're a good coach, that's what you want.
You want
your athletes should be able to start smashing you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like, I look at what my guys were, how much ground they covered in such short time versus how long it took me. Like, I remember, like, I have guys that throw head kicks within like a week. Like, man, it took me like probably a year or two to learn how to throw a good head kick. Yeah. Like, it just took so long because I had no like natural ability to do it or no good instruction for it. So like, I see like every time the next generation just is able to grow up so much faster. You know, so like, of course they should be way better than you. You know, the only thing that you have on them is that experience, which you're always gonna have until you die, right? But like, I mean, at a certain point, like, everybody should be able to eclipse you.
Yeah, and that's, I think that's desire. So anyone who is overly excited about how much better they are than the older generations is not really doing a lot of thinking. I think old school should be happy for the changes. But in other realms, jiu-jitsu has always been easy for me for some reason, but in other things, it's harder. And I think
to be open-minded. You know?
Yeah, well, not open-minded. I do think that, and I know we just talked a ton about this, but just to wrap it up, like I think technology is making people unhappy.
Oh, I think so. I think it makes life more complicated in pursuing happiness, right? Because like you said, you go on social media and now you can compare yourself to every single person on the planet, and it's kind of a big scale, right? Like it's easier to figure out your place when your vision's smaller, right? It would kind of be like trying to hunt from an airplane.
Yeah.
It's like, man, you're way too high up there. You could see a million different things. Which one do I actually go after? Yeah. Versus when you're on the ground, I mean, I can only see so much. I could focus. I'm like, okay, there, you know. But if I have to look at everything, I'm wondering. I don't know where I'm supposed to be in life. You're confused. There's too much going on.
I call it the tyranny of choice. Yeah, it's like going to Cheesecake Factory. Their menu is like 20 pages long. I hate that. I don't go to Cheesecake Factory for that reason. The menu's too big. No, I want to go to a place like, give me like 4 options, and that's all. It does make things faster, easier, and almost better, I think.
Being more limited, right? Like I know, like from a dining point of view, I see a big menu, I think, oh, this is going to be crap. Because just from a specialist point of view, how are you going to be good at making 50 different dishes? Yeah. There's no way. Nope. Like you go to a nice restaurant, usually it's like you have 2 or 3 set menus. Like, okay, like this is their jam. They know this, they can do that. They don't have to like give you such a wide variety.
They trust it, they're going to like it.
Yeah, like I'm going for French cuisine. So I already know on the bat it's French. Okay, I'm going to get duck, this. All right, I know I'm good, right? Like if you have to shotgun to try to capture a giant audience, you're also going to have bad aim. Right?
I thought I would never want to own a restaurant because it sounds like even more work than the gym, and I'm good. So, but like I thought I've had this idea before. Like if I ever had a restaurant, I'd have like no menu. There'd be like a daily special. Yeah. And that's it. If you don't like it, go somewhere else. I think it'd be a hit. I think it'd be so different. Like this is all you get. We cook 1 meal a day, and that's it.
Yeah, they do that in quite a few places.
Yeah, I like that.
They just like the chefs, I've seen it where they do it for like a week. Like, okay, chef's menu for this week is just this, right? And they probably, it makes sense on many fronts. One, you're probably going to get the best version of that plate because he's not being distracted, or the chef is doing that. 2, from an economic standpoint, the restaurant knows we just have to hoard up this stuff. Yeah. We don't have to buy so many different things, and something's going to spoil. Yeah, right. I can that, And then 3, I think from the customer perspective, easy. You don't have to like, oh, what am I going to get? Right?
You sit down. Yeah. They just bring it to you. There's no ordering. Yeah. You sit down and someone just brings you. Like I prefer that, to be honest. I mean, as long as there's no liver. Like I can't eat liver. It's about the only thing I don't eat. Like everything else, I'm cool with. So I would love a place like that. So that's an idea for you guys in case anyone's thinking about a restaurant. If you do it open in Vegas near Spring Mountain area, I'll be a customer.
There you go.
Dave, where are we at, man? Like, what time is it? Yeah, it's just about 3 o'clock. I got to get going.
Yes, sir. Let's do it.
Dude, I had a lot of fun, as always. Yeah. I'll be here next week, all week, too. So
awesome.
Get another one in.
We'll do it.
Hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for listening to our bullshit. Again, saving the world multiple times over. Your 2 favorite superheroes, Robert Drysdale and David Avellan. Have a good day.
Peace.
Ciao.